For loved ones, she can remain steadfast until death. For revenge, she can drink blood from her hair. Protecting the country, she can sacrifice her life and forget death. The intrigues and intrigues in the shopping mall, the intrigues and intrigues in the harem, and the mysterious atmosphere in the court. She worked hard step by step, transforming from a businesswoman to an empress who looked down upon the world. She was admired by the people and has been remembered for generations. Keywords of the novel.凤帝临朝no pop-ups,凤帝临朝TXT complete collection download,凤帝临朝latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Wedge Lin'an City Breakthrough. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Wedge Lin'an City Breakthrough. Twilight. 13 years, on the 6th day of June, before dawn. The sky above Lin'an City is shrouded in dark clouds, with lightning and thunder roaring. The mournful wind strikes like ghosts crying and wolves howling, and in an instant, heavy rain drifts down from the sky. The governor of Mengzhou, Youzhou, joined forces with the three states of Chu, Wei, and Qin, and sent 100,000 troops to the city. He pointed his sword at the sky and shouted sternly, "You are a foolish ruler. You have killed your father and seized the throne, and your lust has made your intelligence faint. You stop the war with war and kill people like a horse. As the saying goes, tigers do not eat their children, but you have not spared your own biological son. Today, I will lead the righteous men of the world to uphold justice for heaven. Destroy the Tao, punish the foolish ruler, stop the war, and make the common people angry." Standing on the city wall, Wang Mingda of Zhuo waved the banner of righteousness and shouted loudly, which greatly boosted the morale of the rebel army. The shouting echoed through the sky and could not be ignored. The city gate opened wide, and General Li Qingji of the auxiliary country knelt down on one knee without saying a word. Behind him were the deadly killers holding their butchers' knives high, their swords bloodshot, mixed with rain and tears, spilling onto the earth. The ground was covered with incomplete corpses, old men with gray hair, weak women, young men with unfulfilled ambitions, and young children waiting to be fed. He slaughtered all the innocent people in Lin'an City. "Ha ha ha, Changsun Jiating, heaven is about to destroy you. You, follow me to rush into the imperial city, take the leader of the foolish ruler, grant the title of duke, reward 100 hectares of good farmland, 1,000 pieces of cloth and silk, and 10,000 taels of silver." Victory was in sight, and Li Zongchao excitedly galloped on his horse, treading on the ground with blood. Rush. Equally excited was the 100,000 strong army behind him, who marched straight into the palace without bloodshed. If they can take down the head of Changsun Jiating, then what awaits them is supreme power and immense wealth. Who wouldn't be tempted by it in this chaotic world? The shouting of killing came from outside, and at this moment, a battle between life and death was also taking place in the Qinghuan Hall. The young seventh prince, Changsun Yuli, clenched his fists tightly at the entrance of the palace and asked anxiously, "Grandfather, it seems that auntie is in great pain. Will she be okay?" Fifth Hongyi paced back and forth in the courtyard, occasionally looking up outside the hall and then inside, with a furrowed brow. Li Zongchao's army is about to attack, but Helan is still in production and unable to move. If he is caught by their people, he will definitely not be able to escape the word death. Feng Qi, please take the seventh prince out of the palace first. Once the Empress Dowager is finished giving birth, I will take them away. The fifth Hongyi made a decisive decision, taking advantage of the fact that before Li Zongchao could invade the palace, he could leave one by one, otherwise no one would be able to leave at that time. The man in white standing behind the fifth Hongyi with drooping eyes lifted his head upon hearing this and said, "Lord, be sure to ensure the safe evacuation of the seventh prince." The instructions of the fifth Hongyi were deeply ingrained in Feng Qi's heart. Without the assistance he received from the fifth Hongyi, he would never have lived to this day. So when facing the rebellious General Li Qingji, he gave his all. Although the sword pierced through the heart, the wind did not take a step back until its body fell heavily to the ground, raising a cloud of dust. The splashing blood dyed Changsun Yu's tender eyes red. Startled, he ran towards the Taichen hall behind him and said, help. The cold long sword pointed towards the ground, and warm blood dripped down the tip of the sword. Li Qingji followed closely behind, covering Chang San Yu's mouth and preparing to eliminate him, permanently eliminating any future troubles. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Wedge abolishes the Empress. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Wedge abolishes the Empress. Chang San Jiating, if you are wise, quickly write down the Zen Edict and the Self-Punishment Edict. Perhaps I can still show great mercy and leave you with a whole corpse. Li Zongqiao has already captured the palace and is currently pressuring Chang San Jiating to abdicate in the Taichen Hall. On a second thought, Li Qingji suggested that it would be better to capture Chang San Yu and use it as a threat to Chang San Jiating. Ha ha ha, ha ha ha. Li Zongqiao, do you think I kill people like wildfire, not even letting go of my own son? If it weren't for the crown prince and Wei Jiaoyi causing chaos in the palace, I would depose him as crown prince. If it weren't for the empress instigating the crown prince to rebel, I would have killed my own son. Damn it, Chang San Jiating. Li Qingji tightly grasped the hilt of his sword and wished he could immediately rush in and cut him alive. The empress grew up with him as a childhood sweetheart, and he knew the empress's character the most. Such a virtuous and virtuous woman, how could she incite the crown prince to rebel? At first it was you who said that the imperial examination intended to depose me as the crown prince and instigate me to kill my father. It was you who secretly offered me a beautiful woman and taught me to be disinterested in politics. It was you who fueled the tide behind the scenes and wanted me to launch a war. I now even suspect that even the death of the crown prince is part of your plan, right? No, it won't. How dare Li Zongqiao dare him? How dare you? Li Qingji felt his mind buzzing and he was a bit unstable when standing. Dog thief. You've been playing with me all my life amidst applause. It's ridiculous that I only realized today. You want me to meditate, and you want me to write a decree of self-blame, you dream. Immediately, the sound of a sharp sword unsheathing and the agony of Chang San Jiating could be heard inside. Through the slightly open crack of the door, Chang San Yu saw with his own eyes Chang San Jiating drawing his sword and committing suicide, falling onto the dragon chair symbolizing supreme power, forever closing his eyes. At this moment, Li Qingji had no mood to pay attention to the power struggles anymore. He almost carried the dull Chang San Yu and headed straight to the Chaohua Palace. Consortly, why don't you quickly accept the decree? In the hands of the eunuch Zhao Qing, it was the last imperial edict left by the eldest grandson Jiating during his lifetime, and the abolished edict has also been issued. Empress, no, it should be the deposed Empress Li Shuhua at this moment. Her almost insane state scared the little maid behind Zhao Qing to the point where her legs trembled. No, I won't. I don't believe it, I don't believe it. It's you spreading false edicts, it's you deceiving me. Come on, come on, come on, take this damn lowly slave off me, take it off. But in today's Chaohua Palace, where else are there people? When Li Zongqiao captured the palace, they had already scattered and fled without a trace. This was drafted by His Majesty himself. The guilty wife Li, is it because you want to resist the decree? The person behind Zhao Qingqiao gave a glance, and the young maid held a tray, trembling her hands as she handed it forward. Li, this is the poisoned wine bestowed by His Majesty. Poisonous wine. No, she doesn't want it. Even without the crown prince and the emperor, she can still become a grand and noble empress dowager. She can support one of the many princes to ascend the throne, and there is a powerful mother tribe behind her to support herself. She must die. Li Shuhua still doesn't understand that from the beginning, she was just an abandoned child in the hands of Li Zongqiao. Zhao Qing felt an extremely strong desire for survival in Li Shuhua's eyes, and it seemed that she was determined not to compromise. Therefore, he had to take action himself. Forced to drink poisoned wine, Li Shuhua died instantly, with her widened eyes as if accusing the emperor of his cruelty. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Fall of the Wedge Country. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Fall of the Wedge Country. After Li Shuhua's death, Zhao Qingchong waved his hand at the young maid and said, "You leave." Upon receiving Zhao Qing's order, the young eunuch hurriedly left, not by Zhao Qing's side. He didn't know where to go, but it was better than being in this troubled land. However, as he left the Chaohua palace, he ran into Li Qingji, who was covered in blood, and said, "Tell me, where is the Empress?" "Yes, inside." The little eunuch trembled as she pointed towards the Ganlu hall, and looked up to see Zhao Qing drawing his sword and committing suicide. "Although I was born a slave, I will never be a slave to the fallen country." Without looking back, Li Qingji's sword dealt a blow to the young eunuch. When he rushed into the Ganlu hall and saw Li Shuhua, who was dying without closing his eyes, Li Qingji felt like the entire sky had collapsed. Shuhua tripped over the threshold. Li Qingji fell in front of Li Shuhua, unable to conceal his feelings for her anymore. If Li Zongchao had not forcibly separated them and forced Shuhua to marry Changsun Jiating, how could they be separated forever now? "Li Zongchao, one day, I will make you pay the price for your ambition and coldness." "No, I'm not leaving." "Father, take I with you first." "I can't do without him, nor can I leave him. I have to go find your majesty. Even if we die, we will die together." That's Auntie's voice. "Auntie, Auntie, wait for Ayu." Long Sun Yu, who was casually thrown by Li Qingji and forgotten in the corner, was pleasantly surprised to hear the voice of the fifth Helan. But by the time Changsun Yu chased out, the fifth Helan was no longer there. He recalled in a daze that the fifth Helan had said he was going to find Changsun Jiating. Although the palace was large, Changsun Yu had lived in it since childhood and naturally knew the way. Run all the way to the front of Taichun Hall. The scenes just now still lingered before her eyes, and Changsun Yu dared not approach, but could not resist the longing for her mother. "Auntie." This call may never be heard by the fifth Helan. Just before Changsun Yu exclaimed in surprise, someone appeared behind him, tightly covering his mouth. He felt a darkness in front of him, and Changsun Yu completely lost consciousness. In the year 263 of the Xingui era, the 13th year of the twilight, on the 6th day of the 6th month, Emperor Xingde drew his sword and committed suicide. Empress Xingchun was deposed, and the noble concubine died by sacrificing herself for the emperor. The royal family's eldest grandchildren were all executed, and the Xingguo was destroyed from then on. As the 8th emperor of the prosperous country, Changsun Jiating became the emperor of the deceased country. After his death, he was thrown into the wilderness and was posthumously honored by later generations, known as Emperor Xingyang. The Li Zong dynasty overthrew the tyranny of the incompetent ruler, changed dynasties, established the country named Qian, changed the Yuan dynasty to Dingkuan, relocated the capital to Luoyan city, built the Taiji palace, and respected the Kaiyuan emperor. In the 18th year of the reign of Emperor Dingkuan, the ruthless style of Li Zongchao remained unchanged, and he issued an order to exterminate the 9 great scholars of Youzhou, Zhao, and Jin. However, in his published article, On the Governance of the People, he hinted that Li Zongchao was suspected of usurping the throne and planning his country. This is the first time in nearly a century that such a heinous punishment has occurred, involving 9 ethnic groups. For a moment, everyone in the entire Qian country was in danger, cautious in their words and actions, especially when it came to the affairs of the previous dynasty. They avoided talking about it, fearing that it would cause trouble. Some people fear power, but there are also people who are not afraid of death. Since ancient times, there have been literati in Youzhou, and the brave and knowledgeable scholars are not just Zhao Jin. Zhao Zhen, a senior fellow of Zhao Jin, personally wrote the 2nd volume of On the Governance of the People. The sentence, "Those who respect the people gain the world, while those who fear the people lose the world," completely angered Li Zongchao. Zhao Zhen from Youzhou talks recklessly about state affairs, and his crime should be punished. Someone, pass on my decree and execute his 9 families to show the world. Your Majesty, absolutely not. Kill Zhao Jin first and then Zhao Zhen. Youzhou will be in chaos. The Shangshu ordered Wang Mingde to step forward quickly and express his sincere admonition. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Wedge's Journey to Youzhou. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Wedge's Journey to Youzhou. As soon as Wang Mingde finished speaking, the courtiers knelt down and shouted in unison, Your Majesty, please think twice. The Zhuo bouquet, who used to be understated in the court, has now become a crucial Shangshu Ling, with one person below 10,000 people above 10,000. The Shangshu Ling's words are far from accurate. This world belongs to Your Majesty, how can anyone else speak up? If we don't kill it as a warning, then everyone in the world will follow suit. How can Your Majesty govern the country? General Li Qingji of the auxiliary country made a statement to refute. The former Grand General of the Fu Kingdom is still the current Grand General of the Fu Kingdom. Meritorious officials have been rewarded, but he remains in his original position. In theory, Li Qingji, who had previously controlled the defense of the Weiyang Palace and purged the imperial city, could have been granted the title of a founding duke. However, for some unknown reason, Li Zongqiao did not mention the matter of rewards. Therefore, for the past 18 years, no one dared to have deep friendships with Li Qingji in the court, and he never intervened in any political affairs. At this moment, everyone present naturally couldn't guess what Li Qingji was thinking. General Li, Zhao Zhen is a great Confucian scholar from Youzhou. The Zhao family has been occupying Youzhou for generations and has established numerous students in the Jishur Pavilion. I'm afraid it's just a matter of pulling one hair and moving the whole body. Aren't you afraid that the Zhao family in Youzhou will use this to rebel? Shangshu Ling, please speak with caution. Li Qingji shouted sternly and gestured to Wang Mingde to look up with his eyes. I saw Li Zongqiao looking at him with an extremely terrifying gaze, and Wang Mingde instantly realized that he had said the wrong thing. I made a mistake for a moment, please forgive me, Your Majesty. The whole person was crawling on the ground, and Wang Mingde regretted it. Although Wang Mingde spoke without hesitation and said things that should not have been said, it reminded Li Zongqiao that he had taken this path in the beginning and he could never become the second Emperor Xingyang. In my opinion, what should we do? Li Zongqiao clenched his fists and worked hard to quell the anger that was about to erupt from his chest. Wang Mingde did not hear any criticism or scolding, and was surprised in his heart. However, he quickly cleared up his emotions and bowed back, saying, If Your Majesty can forget the past, honor the virtuous and virtuous, and let Zhao Zhen offer wine to the Imperial Academy, Youzhou will surely be stable. Guozijian sacrificial wine. Since the establishment of the Guozijian in the previous dynasty, it has gone through many vicissitudes, but only one thing has remained unchanged. The position of sacrificial wine must have been held by highly respected and knowledgeable officials in the court, but since the establishment of the Qian dynasty, there has been no suitable candidate, so Wang Mingde is temporarily holding this position. Since that's the case, I'll leave it to you to handle. Although Li Zongqiao left with a displeased expression on his face, fortunately he did not engage in mass killings this time. In the civil and military affairs of the Manchu dynasty, only Wang Mingde was able to bring back the power of the Li Zongqiao. Since then, Wang Mingde's position in the court has been unshakable. At the Jishur Pavilion in Youzhou, Zhao Zhen was listening to the students' defense when he saw a group of fierce men rushing in, and the students' eloquence was instantly interrupted. Bai Haoran, a student from Jishij, looked displeased and took 2 steps forward to question, who is so arrogant? How dare you trespass on Jishij and disturb the defense meeting? Unexpectedly, the leader disdained talking to such an unknown person and pushed Bai Haoran away without looking at him. He walked straight towards Zhao Zhen with a disdainful expression and shouted, Zhao Zhen, the Minister of Personnel, please. Shangshu Ling. It's that traitor and traitor. Bai Haoran stumbled for 2 steps and was supported by his classmate before standing firm and saying, Oh, I must be someone so arrogant. I turned out to be Wang Mingde's lackey. When has the attendant of the Ministry of Rites been so humiliated? Wang Guizhi walked slowly towards Baiharan, his veins bulging on his forehead, and he lightly tugged at the corner of his mouth. Who are you? No matter who you are, if you dare to speak shamelessly and insult me, it is a capital offense. He actually stabbed Baiharan to death on the spot. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Succession of the Wedge Emperor. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Succession of the Wedge Emperor. Throw the sword to the subordinate and gently wipe it with a handkerchief, as if nothing had happened just now. The classmates were all frightened by the bloody scene in front of them. This time, there was no one to help Baiharan's fallen body. I don't know if it was a moment of confusion or not. Only a 7 or 8-year-old child rushed out of the crowd, knelt beside Baiharan, and repeatedly called out, "Brother! How dare you disregard the law and publicly slaughter my disciples from Youzhou? Who gave you the courage?" Dressed in plain clothes and with gray hair, Zhao finally couldn't help but appear. The Zhao family holds a significant position in Youzhou, and no one has ever dared to be so reckless. The law. Here, I am the law. His cousin is the Minister of State of the court, and even His Majesty wants to give him some respect. He dares to speak out in his plain clothes, saying that His Majesty is not right. If you want to kill him according to his will, why bother with this? Take it away. Wang Guizhi quickly turned around and left. Although the students tried their best to stop them, they still hadn't fought against that group of fierce and vicious men. In the chaos, many students were severely injured. Zhao Zhen was forcibly taken away, not knowing where he was going and what happened during the period. No one knew, but it was heard that after that, Zhao Zhen, who was in his old age, left Youzhou and went to Loyan to serve as the sacrificial wine of the Guozijian. From then on, the turmoil in Youzhou was finally calmed down. In just 1 year after that, Li Zongchao's physical condition took a sharp turn for the worse, even reaching the point of dying. He was haunted by nightmares night and night, and became very irritable because he couldn't sleep peacefully. "Kill me, kill this lowly servant." Because the maid's eyes looked very similar to Li Shuhua, she innocently lost her life. Nowadays, everyone in the Tai Chi Palace is in danger and unwilling to be on duty at the Yongshu Palace, fearing that one day if Li Zongchao is unhappy, their heads will fall to the ground. Li Zongchao, who was powerless to govern, finally declared his abdication in the 19th year of the Dingquan reign, with his eldest son Li Hongqi inheriting the throne and himself abdicating to the position of supreme emperor. From then on, he devoted himself wholeheartedly to the Buddha and remained indifferent to worldly affairs. After Li Hongqi ascended the throne, in order to maintain the image of a filial son and cater to his interests, he built temples throughout the country, causing people to struggle and complaining. Has the person been found? Standing in front of a huge Buddha statue, Li Zongchao asked. Li Qingji, kneeling on both knees, answered in a deep voice, "Please forgive me, Your Highness." Forgiveness is forgiveness again. 19 years, a whole 19 years have passed. The 7th Prince Changsun Yu and the 9th Princess Changsun Qi of the previous dynasty, even though he sent countless secret clues, could not find those two despicable beings. Cutting the grass without removing the roots is bound to bring endless calamity. But for so many years, Changsun Yu and Changsun Qi seem to have evaporated from the human world, with no trace to be found. How can he eradicate the root cause again? Recalling the raging fire of the past, the old man Fifth Hongi would rather self-immolate with his wife than reveal the whereabouts of those two lowly races. Li Zongchao felt extremely frustrated. Well, let's spare him for now. After all, there are still many things that need to be left for him to handle. Squeeze your fists tightly, and Li Zongchao will forcefully suppress the impulse to kill Li Qingji. How was the heavenly sacrifice ceremony? I heard that the emperor didn't stand firm and almost fell off the altar. Li Zongchao's face showed displeasure. This was the first grand ceremony held by Li Hongqi after he ascended the throne, and he almost made a joke. Li Qingji had long been accustomed to the tyranny and unpredictability of the Lizong dynasty, and his face calmly replied, "Perhaps it was the Empress who had just arrived in heaven, and your majesty was in a bad mood, so he stayed up all night. That's why. It's just that a woman has died. He's so passionate about children and women, how can he bear the heavy responsibility of this world?" Cough, cough, cough. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Wedge Book Establishment and Succession. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Wedge Book Establishment and Succession. Feeling impatient, Li Zongchao began to cough violently, as if he was about to cough his lungs out. Li Qingji quickly took out a medicine bottle from his arms, opened it, poured out 2 black small pills, and handed them to Li Zongchao. Seeing that his body was becoming increasingly weak and he needed these medicinal pills to sustain his life every day, Li Zongchao became even more angry. After only 3 days of the heavenly worship ceremony, he appointed a successor for Li Hongque. Wang Yusen was the eldest daughter of Wang Mingde, the minister of state. When Li Hongque was still the crown prince, she was the crown prince Liangdi and the biological mother of the second prince Li Shiyao. She was the perfect candidate for a successor. Due to this matter, there was inevitably a rift between Li Zongchao and Li Hongque's father and son. Yuanhou Duguyao and Li Hongque grew up as childhood sweethearts and had a deep affection for each other. Now that Duguyao had just passed away, Li Zongchao disregarded Li Hongque's feelings and hastily established a successor for him. Li Hongque naturally couldn't accept it with pleasure. And the Minister of Personnel, Wang Mingde, has always been regarded by Li Hongque as a thorn in his side and a thorn in his flesh, wishing to be eliminated quickly. Nowadays, his eldest daughter has become the Empress of the matrimonial world, giving Wang Mingde another layer of father-in-law status. This has further fueled Wang Mingde's arrogance in the court and made Li Hongque unhappy. After the coronation ceremony, Li Hongque disregarded Wang Yusen, who was still waiting in the Qingming Palace, and went to the Zichen Palace to correct the memorial for the night. After the second day's pilgrimage, he went straight to Chenghui Hall to change into plain clothes, only bringing 3 or 2 guards, and then left the palace. "What are you saying? Your Majesty has left the palace." Wang Yusen became angry with embarrassment and threw the phoenix crown hard to the ground. He left the palace, and surprisingly, he just left the palace like this without even saying a word, leaving her behind like this. 15 years ago, as the crown prince, he married the crown princess and also adopted her as a good wife. She sat alone until dawn. But now, Lonely Yao, that despicable person, has died. She is the Empress of the motherland, his wife. What exactly is she in his eyes? Wang Yusen almost bit his lower lip and his eyes were fierce. "Go, send someone to keep an eye on your Majesty, see where he has gone, what he has done, and who he has seen. I'll cut it off, your Majesty, run quickly." The last guard fought desperately to resist, but could only hold off for a while. Li Hongque was seriously injured and ran away with heavy steps, but he didn't want to roll down the low slope. The horse was frightened and let out a hiss. It raised its front hooves high and almost threw the woman inside the car out. Chang Sun Qi covered his head, gritted his teeth in pain, and poked his head out. "Thunder, what's going on?" Thunder flipped the person over and saw that the man's chest was already soaked in blood. If it weren't for the faint moans of pain that came out intermittently, who would have thought he was still alive? "Over there, catch up." A group of black-clothed men wielded blood-stained swords as they chased after them. Chang Sun Qi quickly summoned Thunder to rescue them from the carriage, and Li Hongque was not killed by those black-clothed men. 10 miles outside the city of Loyan, Li Hongque vaguely saw the deceased Duguyao and said, "Io, is that you? Are you awake? Wait a moment, I'll find someone to come over." Chang Sun Yao saw the man wake up and was about to run to find Thunder, but was grabbed by his wrist. The pain in his chest restored his sanity. "Who are you? Where is this?" Despite suffering such a serious injury, his strength was still so strong that his wrist was tightly grasped, and Chang Sun Ki couldn't break free. You were chased and fell on the road. I asked the guards to save you, but your injuries were too severe, so we can only stop at the 10-mile inn outside the city for now. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Outside the city of Wedge and Loyan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Outside the city of Wedge and Loyan. I originally wanted to tell Li Hongqua his name, but on second thought, Chang Sun Ki realized that she had slipped out quietly. It was better not to tell anyone else. My elders have given me the word Zhuanling, so you can call me Zhuanling. As soon as Chang Sun Ki finished speaking, before he could ask the other person's name, he heard a thunderous shout from outside. Miss, run away. Immediately, the sound of fighting came from downstairs. Not good, it must be those black-clad people chasing after us. Li Hongqua endured the pain and took Chang Sun Ki away from the 10-mile inn. No matter how hard he struggled along the way, he never let go. You quickly let go of me, Thunder is still at the inn, I need to go back and find him. Chang Sun Ki refused to move any further and used all his strength to tightly pull Li Hongqua, almost sitting on the ground and throwing a splash. Your Majesty, what's wrong with you? In front of the palace gate, 2 guards rushed over and directly exposed Li Hongqua's identity. Upon learning of the other party's identity, Chang Sun Ki was first shocked, then delighted and said, Are you Emperor Gongxiao? Quickly, send someone to help Thunder. Although Thunder is very powerful, after all, there are many people in the other party, and Thunder's 2 fists are difficult to match with 4 hands. If Zhe was present at this moment in Chapter 5, he would definitely be pounding his chest and feet, regretting that he did not expect today. Initially, in order to protect Chang Sun Ki, he concealed all the truth and never disclosed it. Now the son of the enemy was close in front of him, but Chang Sun Ki had no idea and even bumped into him, afraid that he would end up hitting his head and bleeding blood. After escaping from the group of people in black, Thunder couldn't find Chang Sun Ki anywhere, so he immediately went to the city to find the secret stronghold of the 5th aristocratic family hidden in Luoyan, and notified the 5th chapter Zhe as soon as possible. Even if Chapter 5 Zhe activated all the hidden lines buried in the city of Luoyang by the 5th aristocratic family, he could not find the trace of Chang Sun Ki. Since then, it has been a year since the Thunder saw Chang Sunyue again. The scene of the reunion is vividly remembered, and the most regrettable thing in Thunder's life is saving the person he should not have saved the most. On the day of Qiqiao, the city was decorated with lights and colorful decorations, and the crowd was bustling, while outside the city was full of danger and tension. According to multiple undercover reports, Chang Sun Ki appeared on a carriage and was being surrounded by dozens of black-clad men. After learning the news, Chapter 5 Zhe hurriedly arrived with his men. The coachman has already been shot, and Chang Sun's key is golden branches and jade leaves. How could he drive any carriage? The horse was randomly whipped by Chang Sun Ki and couldn't stop running wildly. Fortunately, the old horse knew the way, and it accidentally stumbled near the watching heavenly palace with Chang Sun Ki. Because the 2 guards guarding the palace gate knew Chang Sun Ki, they helped to stop the black-clothed men with the help of the people looking at the heavenly palace. Only then did Chang Sun Ki have a chance to breathe. Hold on. That is the only bloodline left by the adoptive father in the world, and even the child he pampered in the palm of his hand. She, who had been hit by 3 arrows, was already at the end of a strong crossbow. She handed her child to Thunder, and Chang Sun Ki entrusted her on her deathbed. Thunder, Thunder, my hardworking child. Her name is Jinshu, Li Jinshu. You must take her safe away, Thunder, take care of my child, my child. Seeing Chang Sun Ki breathe with his own eyes, Chapter 5 Zhe is furious. No, The death of Chang Sun Ki dealt a heavy blow to him, causing him to constantly attack and forget to defend. He was seized by the man in black and died with 1 sword. Lord! Thunder wanted to rush up to help, but the baby in his arms suddenly began to cry loudly. For the sake of the child, Thunder cannot take risks. He is a sinner in the 5th-generation family. If it weren't for Changsun Qi entrusting his newborn daughter to him, he would never have survived to this day. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Main text Camel Caravan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Main text Camel Caravan. Ding lingling, ding lingling. The flat sand is yellow and vast, the snowy sea is vast and vast, the geese are chirping, the camel bells are ringing, the iron bones of the Polonia trees are clanging, and the red willows are growing everywhere. A camel caravan slowly moves forward in the desert, accompanied by camel bells, and a Hu country nursery rhyme, Ping Sha Jiao, faintly comes from the caravan. Take a quick and decisive blow, and get rid of another troublemaker. Feng Xiuming casually wiped off the bloodstains on his face with his hands, his sharp eagle-like eyes fixed on the camel caravan and said, "Brothers, we have fat sheep delivered to your door again." The bandits raised their heads with a grim smile and looked at the camel caravan on the sand dune, their eyes shining as they stared at several women from the Hu kingdom. "Put away your lewd expressions, are you looking for a cigarette again?" With a furrowed brow, Feng Xiuming scolded with a displeased expression on his face. The bandits immediately put on a smiling and pleasing face and said, "General, we're just looking for feelings. It's not easy to be a robber these days. If you're not fierce, you'll just treat us like soft persimmons, just pinch them casually. And besides, brothers, we haven't seen each other for a long time." Speaking of which, he instinctively swallowed a mouthful of saliva, touched the back of his head, and chuckled. "All right, after I finish this ticket, I'll take you to the Zhangjiao pavilion. You can play whatever you like. But don't tease good women. Please take care of your hands and feet later, or I'll chop your losers. Although they have become robbers, they must also be robbers with moral bottom lines." Feng Xiuming put away the blood-stained long sword, but in fact, he was very clear in his heart that since he had already become a robber, there was no morality to speak of. As the camel bell approached, the caravan had already arrived in front of them, led by a girl in red, still singing the nursery rhyme of the Hu country. "Hu people. Not right." Feng Xiuming looked up and down, and although there were several women from the Hu kingdom in the caravan, the rest of them didn't seem to be from the Hu kingdom at all, but more like merchants from the Qian kingdom. "Stop. Hey, what about you? Are you all blind? I don't know if you've been robbed by us." Ba Hongxin patted his chest with a knife and was very dissatisfied with the feeling of being ignored. The caravan stopped, and the women of the Hu kingdom panicked and discussed in Hu language with pale faces, "What should we do? We have been robbed, will they kill us?" "Feng Xiuming, a traitor of the Qian kingdom, why did you run to the territory of the Hu kingdom and become a sand bandit without being your bandit in Pingling?" Unexpectedly, Feng Xiuming had to re-examine the girl in front of him, as his identity was exposed by a young and inexperienced girl. "I saw her at the age of 7 or 8, dressed in a bamboo blue skirt, with beautiful black hair scattered behind her. She was wrapped in delicate braids with ribbons and wrapped in a face scarf to shield herself from the wind and sand, making it difficult to see her appearance. Only a pair of clear and lively eyes were revealed. But why can't I remember meeting such an interesting girl before?" Feng Xiuming took 2 steps forward and held his head high as he said, "Not bad, I am Feng Xiuming, but I am not a traitor to Qianguo." "What is Qianguo?" "I have always only recognized Xinguo and have never heard of any nonsense about Qianguo." "Oh. It turns out that General Feng was so loyal and patriotic to the emperor. I just don't know where General Feng was when Lin'an city was destroyed. Where was General Feng when Emperor Xingde was forced to draw his sword and commit suicide?" The girl in red, who had just sung the nursery rhyme of Hu country, spoke out when questioned. End of this chapter. Chapter 9 Main text. Sand bandits blocking the path. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Main text. Sand bandits blocking the path. The girl in red looks slightly older than the girl in blue. The red dress is particularly eye-catching, and her long hair is also draped behind her, but not wrapped with ribbons. Instead, she uses extremely precious red agate beads to embellish her braids. I said, "You two little ladies know quite a bit, but have you really figured out the situation? You are being robbed by us. Do you understand the robbery?" What Ba Hongxin couldn't bear the most was the feeling of being ignored. He couldn't help but jump out and threaten the girl in red again, pointing his knife at her and shouting, "Give up all the valuable things quickly. Maybe we can still show mercy and spare you from dying." "Ah! You little rabbit, how dare you bite me?" Jiao Laoer's hand hurt from being bitten, and his long sword fell to the ground, jumping and cursing. Ba Hongxin couldn't help but burst into laughter and said, "Ha ha ha, Jiao Laoer, you coward, you can't even stand a yellow-haired child." Under Li Jinshu's red veil, the slightly curved corners of her mouth indicated her current mood. From the beginning, she noticed the boy in Xuani, who was about 10 years old and had been squatting on the ground with his head down. He was held by Jiao Laoer's neck with a knife and remained motionless. I thought he was a weak person, but was scared out of courage. Unexpectedly, he was looking for an opportunity to escape. Jiao Laoer picked up his knife and was about to pursue the boy in Xuani when Feng Shuming shouted, "Get back! Do you still think it's not embarrassing enough?" Originally, he killed these troublemakers and robbed some money just to save him. Now that the crisis has been resolved, he can be considered to have given an explanation to that person. As for what that kid will do in the future, it has nothing to do with them. That's right, whatever that kid does, quickly kill the fat sheep in front of him, that's the most important thing. Ba Hongxin licked the dry and cracked lips, feeling a bit impatient. The sun in this desert is too poisonous, and he has been sunburned several times. When she goes back to the Cangjiao pavilion, Xian Yang should not recognize herself anymore. Thinking about it, she feels a bit distressed. Just talk too much. Feng Shuming made a sharp turn and was about to leave on horseback. Ba Hongxin and Jiao Laoer, who were eager to try, were all a bit confused. Jiao Laoer always followed Feng Shuming's lead and quickly picked up his knife, causing Ba Hongxin to look puzzled and say, "General, the fat sheep hasn't been slaughtered yet." Jiao Laoer rolled his eyes to the sky and said, "What nonsense. Why don't you keep up?" After hesitating for a while, Ba Hongxin still followed suit, but he was slightly dissatisfied with Feng Shuming in his heart. He left such a fat sheep to be slaughtered. What did the general think in his heart? And without money, when can he redeem Xian Yang? However, only Feng Shuming knew in his heart that they could never slaughter this fat sheep. Although this camel caravan was led by only 2 young girls, accompanied by several beautiful women from the Hu kingdom. But behind the caravan, there were many strong men following. Judging from their physique, everyone was a trainee. If they really started working, it's hard to say who won and who lost. Most importantly, they were members of the 5th-generation family in the desolate city. Just now, when Feng Shuming looked at the 2 girls, he saw the Nirvana phoenix on the golden camel bell. Feng, the king of all birds, is a symbol of imperial power. Who else in this world has the courage to challenge the authority of the royal families of various countries and use the phoenix as a family totem, except for the 5th family in the desolate city? End of this chapter. Chapter 10. The main text is temporarily interrupted by an oasis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. The main text is temporarily interrupted by an oasis. Sister, they're leaving. Su Luoyu looked at the direction they were leaving, lost in thought. Li Jinshu nodded slightly and lightly patted the camel peak, saying, "Muna, let's go too." On the way back, the caravan passed through an oasis, which was surrounded by poplar trees and had a beautiful scenery. Sister, there is a large temperature difference between day and night in the desert. Populous Euphratica trees can block the wind and sand, and resist the cold. Let's rest here for a night first, and then continue our journey tomorrow. Su Luoyu's suggestion, Li Jinshu has always had no objection. He tied Muna to a poplar tree and looked around. This oasis was indeed the best camping site. The sky is getting dark. First, settle the women of the Hu kingdom. Su Luoyu commands the guards, saying, "You guys, go pick up some branches and light a campfire, then boil some hot water and rice soup." Snakes, insects, mice, and ants are most fond of appearing at night. Su Luoyu carried a lot of medicinal powder with him and sprinkled it carefully around him, then prepared to wash his hands by the river. Squinting her eyes, Su Luoyu noticed that Feng Xiuming was splashing water on his face across the shallow riverbank. Just now, when I saw the direction they were leaving, I guessed that they might be going to the barren city. Seeing them here now makes me even more convinced. After all, this oasis is a must-pass place from the state of Hu to the barren city. Feng Xiuming was originally an orphan living on the streets. When he was young, he was adopted by Feng Dahu, the chief escort of the Hongyun escort agency. When he was escorting, he met Prince Shinguoping, Changsun Jishuan, and the two of them were kind-hearted, forming a bond of friendship. After the death of Feng Dahu, Feng Xiuming resigned from the army and achieved countless military achievements during his 4 years in the army. Upon recommendation by Changsun Jishuan, he leapt to become the general of cavalry, in charge of military symbols and commanding 100,000 soldiers to guard the border. He was a rare talent. Only Lin'an was slaughtered, and most of the relatives and friends of the soldiers were killed by Li Zongchao, so they were unwilling to be loyal to Li Zongchao. Changsun Jishuan also died at the hands of Li Qingji, so Feng Xiuming was the same. Helpless, Feng Xiuming could only lead his soldiers to settle in Pingling and became a bandit. Pingling is located at the border of the Qian and Ming kingdoms, with vast and continuous mountains that are easy to defend and difficult to attack. The Lizong dynasty has sent people to encircle and suppress it multiple times, but they have not been successful. Although that's the case, can 100,000 soldiers survive through robbery alone? I believe their lives have been very difficult these years. If you want to open an escort agency, Feng Xiuming is a good partner. At some point, Li Jinshu had already appeared behind her, and without much communication, they understood what she was thinking. They looked at each other with a smile, and the plan was already in their hearts. Unconsciously, it was already sunset and the moon was in the sky. The youngest guard in the caravan, Bu, came over and called out, "2 girls, the rice soup is already cooked." "Okay, thank you all for your hard work." Su Luoyu responded and walked slowly with Li Jin. Lowering his head, he followed behind the two of them, occasionally stealing a glance at the bamboo green back, his youthful handsome face slightly red. Gu Fei bumped his shoulder into Tianyu and said, "Look, I'll tell you that Bu Yi has impure thoughts towards us, Miss Eyre." Miss Eyre just said something to him. Look at how his face turned red. So you specifically asked Bu Yi to call the girls just now, just to see this scene. Tianyu glanced contemptuously at Gu Fei, shook his shoulders, and took 3 steps away from him. "I think you are the one with a dirty mind, right? How old is Bu Yi? How old is Miss Eyre? TSK. No, how did it turn into his mind being dirty? It's clearly that kid Bu Yi." End of this chapter.